Do you want to do this? Should we do this now?
Make it happen.
Do we have to do records? Oh.
You can just note the attendance. You'll have to call it to order, and then you can note the attendance.
We have a special meeting we're going to call to order right now, which is we're going to call to order the Executive Committee of the State Board of Arizona, State Education Board of Arizona, and both Dr. Kaur and Luke Narducci are in attendance, and I'm going to turn some time over to Catcher Baden to discuss possible action to reconvene and appoint members to the K-3 Literacy Ad-Hoc Advisory Committee. And after we adjourn, then we'll have a few minutes left before the regular meeting starts at 9. Catcher?
President Narducci, Vice President Kaur, the only item on the agenda today for the Executive Committee is the reconvening and appointing of members to the K-3 Literacy Ad-Hoc Committee. This committee had been formed by the board a couple years ago, and the Executive Committee, per board rule, has the authority to reconvene that committee every year and appoint or reappoint members. This item specifically is as a result of some of the discussions that happened at the board retreat, and it was felt that the K-3 Ad Hoc Committee could assist with a lot of the discussions that the board had taken around third grade literacy and early literacy and move on when reading. So the items, the two action items for us today that we can do in one motion is reconvening the ad hoc committee and then also appointing the listed members. The members that are listed and recommended for appointment are the same members as the previous ad hoc committee, with a couple exceptions. One is that staff is recommending member Wellborn to take the other board member position on that committee in place of member Taylor, and we did speak to member Taylor and member Wellborn, and they both feel comfortable taking that, making that change. And then there are a few additions at the end of the membership of that committee, and that's really to ensure that the committee is geographically diverse. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any question? Have a motion?
Thank you, Catcher. With that, I would motion to approve the reconvening and appointing the members of the K-3 Literacy Ad Hoc Advisory Committee as listed in the attachment.
And I second that, and we are both in favor. Thank you. So we'll adjourn our executive committee. Thank you, Catcher, very much. And now we have about 10 more minutes before our general meeting starts, so we can start talking, and we'll reconvene our normal meeting at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
I found my spot.
Morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock on the round clock in the back, and that's what we'll be guiding our time by during the meeting. We want to welcome everybody out. We'll call our meeting to order, and what we're going to start with is the Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. Kaur, and then we're going to be followed by an invocation by Larry Fultz, who is also the Executive Director at the Arizona Interfaith Movement. We were going to have a national anthem this morning, but hopefully the group is okay, but they're not here. So we're going to skip the national anthem unless there's someone in the audience who wants to impress us with their vocal skills. Seeing no hands and nobody up here volunteering, we're going to bypass that. So we'll start with the pledge and then go into the prayer. Everyone, please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you for this new day, a day to bring hope, renewal, redemption, and I pray that that will happen in all of us as we consider the hopes of our future. This morning we take pause in the busyness of our schedule to think of one who's lived among us, who's modeled for us what it means to give of oneself, for love of country, love of family. Among us he has lived and shown to us this great example. And I pray that all of us might aspire to that achievement in our lives. We pray for the family of Senator John McCain and all those who are with him today in sorrow and remembrance. Father, I pray as we undertake the business of this day and this body, that you will give wisdom, guidance, understanding. And most of all, Father, I pray for all of the children in our state, those young people who are the future of our country. I pray for them and the decisions that are made here that will be beneficial for all of them. These things we ask in the name of our Heavenly Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Fultz. We have roll call.
President Arducci.
Here.
Vice President Kaur.
Here.
Superintendent Douglas.
Person by phone.
Member Baker.
President by phone.
Present, sorry.
Burton.
Present.
Member Chang.
Present.
Member Kay.
Here.
Member Mack.
Here.
Member Taylor.
Here.
Member Wellborn.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here after, well, we've had 2 months without a formal meeting. Well, without a meeting here in this building. One thing I'd like to do is move on to the President's Report, and just report that the State Board had its business retreat and special meeting in early August. We were up in Prescott. At that meeting, I was impressed with the dedication of our board members as they engaged in difficult conversations. We're committed to moving the needle forward in Arizona education as a whole. Our staff did an amazing job in pulling it all together for us and in organizing the event, and I thank all the stakeholders who made the drive up north to be with us on those 2 days as well. We look forward to the future work of the board as we continue to discuss where we need to go in the areas of move on when reading, accountability, and school improvement. Williams, anything to add to that? Thank you. Superintendent, does anybody else have a comment with respect to the retreat? Okay. We'll move on to the superintendent's report while she still has reception on her phone. Superintendent Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things I'd like to mention for the board. One is, I'm sure you're all well aware that the AZ merit scores were released, and they show some minor gains in most of the grade level areas. I'm sure probably not quite what we would all hope for, but nonetheless it is a move in the right direction. One thing I wanted to share with the board was something that I became aware of last week when a constituent, a community member, reached out to me about a discussion at their local board meeting about their district having discussion of using the AZ merit scores to inflate or enhance, I guess was the word they used, the grades of some of their students, whether they were proficient or highly proficient. In that particular district, it was tabled, but it came to my attention that several other districts have done that as well. Now, when the A through F grade was suspended, that specifically was prohibited. But now, I guess it's not, but I'm not sure whether that's intentional or whether it was an oversight. But to me, it's something parents should be aware of. So hopefully that helps get the message out. I wanted to share also, I had the privilege of attending part of an ABEC school safety conference that they conducted last Friday, and that made me think that perhaps I should make the board aware that ADE, in the past we've generally had annual school safety conferences, but since what has happened in Falkland, we've been able to move them to quarterly conferences, and we bring in superintendents, charter school administrators, law enforcement, representatives of the governor's office, to make sure not just that we're talking about this issue, but what kind of concrete things can be put in place to make sure that this never happens in Arizona to the absolute best of our ability, and we protect our children as best we can. So the last thing that's a good segue into the last thing I'd like to report. I'm not in the building for the meeting today because shortly I'll be heading out to Lake Havasu City, and I wanted to give the school district a shout out for what they're doing, actually having a kickoff for it tonight, and it's called Rachel's Challenge, and it's a program from Rachel Joy Scott was the first victim in the Columbine High School shooting back in 1999, and she affirmed her belief of God, and when she was asked to renounce that, that resulted in her tragic death on that tragic day. But to learn from that this young lady had kept many journals about reaching out to her fellow students and things she had done, which resulted in Rachel's Challenge. And that school district is kicking off this program this year for their students. And I commend them for doing that and would encourage other schools to look at what type of things can we do, because I think as we see these school safety issues, the hardest part to deal with is the challenges that our students have. So with that, Mr. President, I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Superintendent, and safe travels today.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the Executive Director's Report.
President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, members of the board, I have a few updates. First is regarding the strategic plan update. So as you're all aware, we focused on 3 areas at the board's retreat: move on when reading, accountability, and school improvement. Board staff was directed to look at 3 individual items from those 3 categories. We are compiling all that information, and we have a meeting with the Department of Education this week to discuss the retreat. Staff will then bring the summary and drafts to the board at a future meeting. Second on my report is the Arizona Online Instruction application window. That window has actually been open for some time. That window will remain open for the 1920 school year until October 31st, at which point all the applications are due to our offices. That application can be found on our website. Third is an update on the board staff position. So we are hiring a research analyst, and we're doing the interviews tomorrow and Wednesday for that position. This was the Director of Special Projects. We did change the name and changed a little bit of what that individual would be doing on a day-to-day basis. We do hope to have that individual selected and in the office as soon as possible so they can begin work on some of the outcomes of the board's retreat. And then finally, for number 4, it's an update on 8th Ref accountability and the RFP, or request for proposals, for the menu of assessments. First, cut scores are for the 17-18 school year will be presented to the board at the September board meeting, and then the letter grades for the 17-18 school year will be released shortly after that September meeting. And then the menu RFP, the department is working on the 2019-2020 menu of assessments RFP. They will be having additional stakeholder meetings. The next meeting would be September 12th throughout the development of the RFP, and the RFP is scheduled to come to the board this fall.
Thank you. Anything else? Fantastic. So, any questions for Director Williams? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 2, which is a call to the public. This is time for requests to speak for items on the consent agenda or for those items not on today's agenda. Director Williams, do we have any submissions?
President Narducci, we do. First up, we have Claudia Weiss, followed by Kathleen Rain.
Good morning, President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, and board members. My name is Claudia Weiss. I am past president of the Arizona Association of School Psychologists, and I currently serve as the communications chairperson. I earned my specialist degree in school psychology from Florida State University. I'm a nationally certified school psychologist, and I'm certified in the state of Arizona through the Department of Education. I am here to speak on behalf of Consent Agenda Item 3C, Revision Qualified Professionals Document. I am grateful to the Arizona Department of Education for proposing the revision today. This document will help us continue to help students, families, school districts, and charter schools reduce barriers to appropriate school-based services. The rationale described in the supporting documentation of the consent agenda is succinct and sound, and I couldn't have said it better myself. So thank you to Associate Superintendent Manley. Thanks. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And good morning, President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, and board members. My name is Kathleen Ron, and I am also a past president of the Arizona Association of School Psychologists, and I'm a former Arizona delegate to the National Association of School Psychologists. I am a specialist level Arizona certified school psychologist and a nationally certified school psychologist. I too am here to speak on behalf of consent psychologists.
I'd like to express my strong support for the approval of the revised qualified professionals document on today's consent agenda. I appreciate the recommendation from ADE and particularly Associate Superintendent Manley to remove the doctoral level language in the existing document in respect to the verification of other health impairment for the cases of ADHD. This modification would continue to meet the requirements of IDEA and be consistent with the position of the National Association of School Psychologists. Thank you for your consideration of this recommendation.
Next up, we have Dr. Jennifer Kirkpatrick, followed by Edie Etz.
Good morning, President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, and board members. My name is Jennifer Kirkpatrick, and I am the current president of the Arizona Association of School Psychologists. I'm here today with a group of professionals, including current and past board members of ASP, school psychologists in training, faculty members from Arizona universities, district lead psychologists, and school psychologists working in Arizona schools. We are here in support of consent agenda item 3C, revision to the qualified professionals document related to the educational eligibility category of other health impairment. The changes to this document proposed by the Arizona Department of Education are consistent with best practices in the field related to identification of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. These practices are described in position statements published by both the Arizona and the National Association of School Psychologists. Additionally, and importantly, the proposed changes align the qualified professional list with the school psychologist certification awarded by the ADE. We appreciate the opportunity this change provides for Arizona school psychologists to continue to use our expertise for the benefit of children and families in Arizona. To conclude, I would like to say thank you to the Arizona Department of Education and Exceptional Student Services for their efforts in this matter, and to you for your time today.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Edie Etz, followed by Ron Tenney.
Good morning, President and Superintendent and board members. My name is Edie X. I am a mother of 7 adopted children. With adoption comes many obstacles, and academics are one of those obstacles. We moved to Arizona 4 years ago from Washington State. We chose our neighborhood because it was close to an A school. To my husband and I, the school's grade was very important. My daughter was in 1st grade and my son was in kindergarten, and it was near the end of the school year. When we enrolled my daughter, she was given an assessment which she scored almost perfect on. The next year, she was given the same assessment towards the end of the year, and she only scored about 50%. The prior letter grade system needed some work. Fortunately, the current letter grade system more accurately represents the quality of schools as it looks at growth and not just where the students came in at. Our current school, AMS Camelback, has shown they are a high-quality school, and despite the fact a majority of the students in the neighborhood are academically at risk and enroll performing under grade level, the school received a B rating last year. They have worked academic wonders in my children's lives. My son Christopher, a 2nd grader when we came to AMSC, he tested at a kindergarten level. Christopher is now in the 5th grade and loves reading and has made tremendous progress. My daughter did not test proficient in her grade level either, but at the end of her 5th grade year in 2018, Ivy tested at a 7th grade ELA and 10th grade in math. AMSC went from about 450 students their first year to almost 1,200 students currently, and this is only year number 4. Our school provides an hour a day, Monday through Friday, of tutoring and 3 hours on Saturday, all for free. AMSC, I believe, will reach the status of AMS Prince, who won the 2016 School of the Year award. EMS schools are amazing and caring charter schools. I know Camelback is on its way to an A rating, and the current letter grade system will mean that A rating will be meaningful when we get there. Parents need to have access to meaningful letter grades, which reflects student growth. My family feels blessed to be part of Academy of Math and Sciences family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ron Tenney, followed by Mark Jordanstad.
Superintendent Douglas, President Narducci, and members of the board, it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm the superintendent of the Heber Overguard School District. They're in the White Mountains. So I figured my drive today, I have 3-hour drives, that's 1 minute per hour of drive. And I just experienced more, I'm just entering my 4th year as superintendent, and you've had more calls to the public than I've had in 4 years. So I thank you for hearing me out this morning and for your service as a board. You probably don't hear thanks enough, and condolences to the John McCain family. Our little district there has just under 500 students, K-12. I brag that I know pretty much every one of those kids, and I kind of cheat because I'm related to probably 30% or 40% of them. But it's a great place to live and raise children, and some of the things that kind of hit education, trickled down to us as well there in rural Arizona. We were able to begin this school year with fully staffed. Some of our teachers are in the internship program and have worked with colleges to work through that internship. So we feel very blessed and fortunate to have every one of our classrooms with a teacher and not having to fulfill them with a long-term sub. Our little area, when I grew up there as a young boy, was most known for its logging industry and the paper mill that was about 15 miles outside of town. That was our greatest export, was our timber and our paper. Today, our greatest export, with the paper mill shutting down and logging, is kind of minute and very small, but our greatest export now in Heber Overguard are our children. And compliments to our staff there who choose to live in a small rural town and understand that they're probably going to be paid a lot less to be there, and yet work very diligently to educate our students and staff. As you go forth in your roles overseeing the education of this state, I realize this is kind of a undaunting task to try to take in considerations of every school district, rural, metropolitan, affluent, inner city. There's a lot of dynamics with each district. For us being an A school, in one of our schools, the others are a B and a C. It's helped us see where we stand. It's helped us to kind of see where we're doing things right. The growth aspect of that is very important for us to see that in our students, and can help us kind of see where we need to improve and keep moving forward. The other aspect is the cut scores. As many of my colleagues will attest to, since deer season just opened up, a moving target is a lot harder to hit. And so keeping those constant and we can kind of know where we need to go and what to aim for down the road. Once again, thank you for your time and appreciate your service.
Before you leave, do you have anything else you wanted to say since you traveled so far?
3 minutes for the drive back.
By the way, I love it
I
up there.
appreciate
I love Heber Overguard. It's a beautiful place. My mom lives in Vernon.
Oh, yes, so you know,
Yeah.
and it's very green right now. We were very worried early on with the drought, but monsoons have been very important for us and have blessed our area. And if anyone ever wants to see the best, we're not incorporated. We have no town council. We have no city police. We rely on our county to supply us with things. Our Chamber of Commerce is very active in our community and does a lot of things to put activities together. Probably the best one is our 4th of July fireworks show. So if you're not familiar with that, I invite everyone to come up and participate in that event. It's pretty spectacular, and the acoustics there in the canyon really add to that. And so we feel very blessed to live where we live, and we appreciate what has been done. For our staff, it meant our base pay went from $30,000 to $35,000. We were able to do with Red for Ed money, and then we tack on 301 monies. We're even up over $40,000 when you add in the 301 monies. So our staff is very appreciative of what was done on that behalf as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Appreciate it.
Up next, we have Mark Jornstad, followed by Tori Roberg.
Good morning, President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, members of the board. I'm Dr. Mark Jornstad, Executive Director of the Arizona School Administrators, whose 1,400 members work with families, parents, students to provide safe, welcoming, inclusive, and collaborative environments to Arizona's 1.1 million students. My remarks today will have an unusual aspect, brevity. I'm here to support item 3C, the adjustment to the qualifications of school psychologists. This is an important adjustment. We thank the department for proposing it, and the Arizona school administrators stand with the school psychologists in supporting this adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last, we have Tori Roberg.
Thank you. Good morning. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. This is my first time in front of you. My name is Tori Roberg. Good morning, and I am with the Secular Coalition for Arizona. Just to comment on something that's not on your agenda today, which is our grave concerns over the proposed changes to science education in Arizona. We sent you a letter on the 24th of May addressed to you, sir, and I hope you've received it. Essentially, we are a nonprofit organization statewide. We are here to protect the constitutional protection of separation between church and state. We were concerned when the drafts were made with, there's a revision process, public feedback was collected. The groups of educators that put these science standards together, many complained that the teaching of evolution had been somewhat dumbed down or crossed out or taken out in certain places. We'd like to see, I'm sorry, my head is just in a cold. I apologize. What we'd like to see is that the State Board of Education, when this comes to you, that we ensure our constitutional principles are not violated in adoption of the new science standards. We feel like the minimizing of the teaching of evolution can only drive a further wedge into our community. It causes disharmony for schools and teachers and will ultimately result in expensive, hopeless litigation that will distract from the teaching of our children. We have here in Arizona State University is home to the Center for Evolutionary Medicine. It's the first of its kind in the entire country. And to send a message to our K-12 students that evolution is just a belief, not a theory, and to not teach them those principles is doing a disservice to our future students who will be attending that school. That school is led by Dr. Randolph Nessy, and if you've never met him, I encourage you to meet him. He's making breakthroughs in medicine, saving lives based on evolutionary medicine. So with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Narducci, that concludes the call to the public.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thanks
President?
Yes, Superintendent Douglas.
Under the guise of, I would take that as criticism to the department and the process we put in place. I'd like to very briefly respond that actually there is nothing in the draft standards or potential draft standards that would violate separation of church and state or be a matter of litigation. And actually, if people compare...
has asked that items 3M and 3O be pulled for a conflict. Is that correct? Correct. Yes, and Member Baker has asked that item 3R be pulled for a conflict. Is that correct? All in favor?
Mr. President?
Yes, Superintendent Douglas. Yes.
For those of us who are on the phone, can the people who move in please identify themselves?
Oh, sure. The motion was Jill. I didn't see this. And the second was Dr. Chang.
Thank you.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Sorry. Any opposed? Okay. Those pass. Now, do I have a motion to approve items 3M and 3O with Member K declaring a conflict? So moved. Second?
Second.
Motion was by Member Taylor. Second was by Dr. Kaur. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve item 3R with Member Baker declaring a conflict?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second. Christine.
Okay. We have Patricia moving, Member Burton seconding. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Move on to item 4. No, item 5. Item 4, right?
Narducci, item 4.
Okay, sorry. That comes after 3, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. Item 4 is a call to the public. Did we offend you?
Looks like class is dismissed.
Members on the phone, we have half the room leaving. We'll wait till they leave, and we'll move on to item 4. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is a call to the public. This is the time for the public to speak on the items on the general session only. Executive Director Williams, do we have any folks?
President Narducci, we did not receive any requests to speak.
Thank you.
Oh my God, we're just blowing through here.
We will move on to item 5A. If no member wishes to have Deputy Director Baden discuss this item, do I have a motion to approve item 5A, which is a presentation, discussion, and possible action to issue a request for proposals to maintain a list of qualified receivers pursuant to ARS 15-103E.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
That was Patricia.
Okay. Patricia moved. Jared seconded. We're good. Motion passes. We'll go on to item 5B. Item 5B is a presentation, discussion, and possible action to open rulemaking procedures for the following. Rule 7-2-809 regarding the emergency administration of auto-injectable epinephrine, and Rule 7-2-810 regarding the emergency administration of inhalers. If no member wishes to have Deputy Director Baden discuss these items, do I have a motion to approve item 5B and open rulemaking procedures on Rule 7-2-809 and Rule 7-2-810?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So first was
Dr.
Dr. Chang. Second was? Okay. Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item 5C. Item 5C is a presentation, discussion, and possible action to open rulemaking procedures for Rule 7-2-1003, Rule 7-2-1004, Rule 7-2-1014, Rule 7-2-1093, Rule 7-2-1112, regarding a school district and non-exempt charter school procurement. With respect to item 5C, if no member wishes to have Deputy Director Baden discuss these items, do I have a motion to approve item 5C and open rulemaking procedures on Rule 7-2-1003, Rule 7-2-1004, Rule 7-2-1014, Rule 7-2-1093, and Rule 7-2-112. Do I have a motion in that regard?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so Jared was the motion. Dr. Chang was the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5D is a presentation, discussion, and possible action to approve the fiscal year 20 State Board of Education budget. Director Williams.
President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, members of the board. We're going so quickly, I wasn't prepared yet. Okay. So all of you received the draft fiscal year 20 budget request to Governor Ducey. This budget was created through our small agency person that we utilize who helps me for accounting purposes. I also met with the new OSPB representative for our agency. Kellen, can you just scroll a little bit? We're asking for the same amount that we requested in fiscal year 19. So it'll be about 1.1. When you look on page 10, under personnel services, you can see that our fiscal year 18 was a little bit less than our fiscal year expended plan because of cost savings with staff vacancies. And you'll see an increase to other operating expenses from 188 to 267. And that is due in part to the consulting services that we received for the A through F accountability. One of the things that we did do this year, Kellen, if you can go to the agency 5-year plan. It's the last page. Should be the last page. We, board staff worked to develop this a little bit more. For fiscal year 19, there were just some very short descriptions on what our 5-year agency plan could be. So with consultation with those two individuals I spoke about earlier, we just created an umbrella of what the board discussed at the board's retreat this past early August. So does anyone have any questions? Any board members have any questions in regards to any of the numbers or figures? And I can help to walk through that.
Looking to the left, nothing. To the right? Anybody on the phone? Superintendent Douglas or Member Baker?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Director Williams. With that said, do I have a motion to approve the State Board of Education's fiscal year 20 budget?
So moved.
Moved by Member Taylor.
Second.
Seconded by Jill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Move on to item 6A. Item 6A is the Arizona State Board of Education convening acting as the Arizona State Board for vocational technological education for items 6A and 6B only. I'll turn it over to Director Williams.
President Narducci, members of the board, items 6A and 6B, we have Kathy Raymond, Deputy Associate Superintendent for Career and Technical Education, and Dr. Heather Cruz, Associate Superintendent, High Academic Standards for Students.
Good morning, President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, members of the board. The first item that we're presenting today are 6 additional industry certifications for approval for the A through F list. These certifications were submitted by industry. They were taken to industry committees as per our process. They were reviewed by the Arizona Quality Skills Commission and approved, and now they're brought to you to be approved to be added to that list.
Do we have any questions regarding that? I have a question. Just from procedure, how do the parents find out about all this that's been done at this level? And is it brought to them by the LEAs, or is it done by the department, or how?
Typically by the LEAs that have the programs that correspond to those programs. We've encouraged all the CTE teachers. They are required to lead to an industry certification, and we've suggested that those be on their course syllabi so that parents can know that. And then also we've started creating the fact sheets that will be posted. Most of them are posted currently on our website, and so districts can pull those down and produce those for parents also.
Just one more question, and then I'll open it up. And then, do the LEAs, how are they accountable to ADE to make sure that that's happening? Is there any procedure that they have to follow to assure you that they're posting it, making the parents aware of it?
No, there isn't. They do have accountability when we go out and do our compliance reviews, that for each program that they are leading students to the certificate. We do have many certificates that students can't actually sit for until they're 18. So they show us evidence that they've prepared them for those certifications.
Thank you. I know Member Welborn had a comment or question.
Thank you. So I appreciate the effort that the department is making to be as inclusive as possible in adding certifications to the CCRI index. My observation from these additional requests is that it doesn't appear that there are standards or expectations from industry as to what their application should look like. If my example would be the Certified Expert Technical Artist Rigging and Animation Certificates. So in this application, there is a very thorough description of the credentials, the expected salary range, what kind of standards and curriculum, what kind of jobs people can hope to get, how many hours of classroom hours and Carnegie units would be represented, what are the testing, et cetera, et cetera. If you compare that very, very thorough, excellent application to the one prior to that, which would be the Certified Electric Health Record Specialist, you can quickly see that there's very, very different type of application. It's just very minimal. So it's hard to assess the depth and value of the certificate without having consistent information about them. In one case, under standards and curriculum, the applicant put in a very detailed description of what are the standards and curriculum that are being taught. In this case, it just says the program will use the standards approved by the Department of Education. There is no comparison or description of how many hours of service or work is required or what kind of Carnegie units. So I would like to encourage the department moving forward to establish some kind of expectations on these applications.
This isn't an application, it was the fact sheet, and I realize that there needs to be more. I have the application before me on that, and there is much more detail.
Okay.
So we will ensure that we have more detail on those. And I know the 1,000-hour cosmetology, there isn't as much detail, but that was because it was a state board of cosmetology change in that certification.
Right. Well, on surface level, it just doesn't appear that there's as much work and study behind it, which is not the case. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Before we post that, we will include more information on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions with respect to 6A, do I have a motion to approve the 6 new industry certification and credentials and to add them to the College and Career Ready Index list of approved credentials?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll move on to
President Narducci.
6B.
Who had the second on that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Member Burton. So Jill had the motion?
Nope.
Who had the motion?
Member Wellborn had the motion.
Thank you. My ears aren't working on both sides of my head. Sorry.
Motioners.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, 6B.
All right, 6B is the work-based learning guidebook that has been developed. It is to give guidelines to districts for counting what is called work-based learning. There are different methods of work-based learning. It's not strictly internship. When we look at smaller rural districts, the opportunities to actually go out and work in a business with an internship are very slim. So this gives guidelines on student-based enterprises, volunteer work, apprenticeships if they're so lucky to get those. And so we have cooperative education, distributive cooperative education, the clinicals, which are part of a lot of our programs, and then the mock business and industry applications.
Any questions regarding that, members?
President Narducci?
Yeah.
I'd just like to make a comment here, and I understand that the context of this document comes from the federal standards that prescribe CTE learning. But one of the things that we talked about that came out of our retreat that I thought was really valuable was the notion that sort of the college, the career ready versus college ready path aren't so distinct and separate. They shouldn't necessarily be that way. They should be more blurred so that there's movement and opportunity between both paths. And the fact that this document specifically describes an internship or such as just a CTE opportunity, I think perpetuates that notion. I don't know if it's just symbolic or not, but you can have a college-bound student who wants to do an internship in a law firm. And we wouldn't want to insinuate that that's not a viable opportunity. So I just want to make a comment, maybe going forward, to have that in mind, if that's possible, to not channel it just one way.
Well, it is channeled that way because of funding, because there are requirements through our federal funding, through our CTED funding, that work-based be a part of that. This doesn't mean that any district or charter cannot use these guidelines for their own purposes. But we have, through a lot of experience and research, created these. The whole goal through CTE is that they get an internship or they have a work-based opportunity that furthers their skills and helps them master their skills that they've learned throughout their program. Typically in CTE, the internship or any of the work-based learning is more or less a capstone. It's at that end of the program when they've learned those skills and techniques.
So it would contradict federal guidelines if we made it more inclusive by suggesting these are CTE and career-based?
We could do that, yes.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Very valuable program. Thank you for all that work. Do I have a motion to approve the revised work-based learning guide as a support for LEAs for the College and Career Ready Index? Moved by Member Taylor.
Second.
Second by Dr. Chang. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move to item 7. Okay?
President Narducci,
Yes.
members of the board, the time is now 9:50. So when we do the notice of meetings to the certification enforcement actions, we tell those individuals to be here by 10.
Okay.
But we also state that the meeting starts at 9. So really it's up to you if you wish to go through to the certification or you want to take a 10-minute break and start back up at 10.
We will take a 10-minute break and we'll start back up at 10. Thank you. Sorry for going so fast. We're going to go ahead and get started in the next minute or so, if not shorter. We still have our members on the phone? Member Baker?
I'm here.
Superintendent Douglas?
I'm here.
Fantastic. We'll reconvene at whatever it is, 10:02, 10:03. We'll move on to item 7, call to the public for certification enforcement actions on the consent agenda. Do we have any requests?
President Arducci, no call to the publics were received.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 8, consent agenda enforcement actions. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 8A, 1 through 7, and 8B?
So moved.
Member Taylor made the motion.
Second.
Seconded. Let's note that Dr. Chang is not here, but we still have a quorum. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Go on to item 9. Call to the public for certification enforcement actions, general session. Do we have any requests to speak?
President Arducci, members of the board, before I get into the 2 requests to speak, I would like to state for the record that Ms. Webb from item 10H did submit a request, a letter to the board on Friday, in which all board members received that letter. First up, we have Mara Huntington, followed by Attorney Bill Holder.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To the president and the superintendent and the board members. My name is Maura Huntington, and I am very appreciative of the board for allowing me to speak today. I did attempt before, but I wasn't on the agenda, so I would like to make this as brief as possible. I would like to start by asking the board if they will possibly consider reviewing the documents that I've brought today, a document showing why I missed getting the notification about the first meeting and why I wasn't in attendance, just because I missed the P.O. box window of 5 days, letters from staff, letters from principal of the school that I was working at after the incident occurred, and I have multiple letters on my behalf. So I would love to be able to just at some point submit those to the board for review in applying to this case. It's very complicated, the situation that led to this event. I am a victim of domestic abuse, and I had just broken out of a relationship with somebody that had physically hurt me in many ways, and I believe that I was kind of under a little bit of a PTSD situation. This is an isolated incident that has never in my life occurred before or since, and after having this incident happen, I, under the rule 13-3716, I made sure that I notified everybody. As I have applying for the jobs, I've notified people about my record and what's on there. And despite that, I worked for 2.5 years since the incident, having wonderful success with the students and the staff, and that's part of the letters on my behalf. And I don't really want to go over, obviously, so I will just say that when I do submit this information to the board, I ask that they please reconsider the decision of 3 years suspension and maybe divert back to the original plea agreement that I was going to accept. That was 1 year, but I had thought that if I could speak about it, maybe they wouldn't stop my teaching in the middle of the year, so I wouldn't be leaving my school in a lurch. That is what happened, and I'm very sad, I'm ashamed, I'm remorseful. I'm asking the board to consider that I've been a great teacher and that I'm well loved and that I'm very healthy and happy about being sober at this point, and I would love to ask the board to reconsider if they need to penalize me in certain ways of, having extra conditions put on me. That would be wonderful. Anything they can think of to help me. I'm not going to cry. I'm totally emotional, and this is my life. And just being with all of you really shows me that this is where I'm meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last request to speak form is from Attorney Bill Holder.
Thank you, board members. I am Bill Holder. I represent Monica Chambrello, who is item 10J on your agenda. Not to try to hide the ball, the wrongdoing that was found by PPAC here involved 2 DUIs in 2009 and 2013 and 4 failures to disclose those arrests in certification applications. That's the case we're talking about. I'll readily grant that the PPAC found those facts as they're described in your background discussion. So why am I here? I'm here to point out 2 mitigating facts which are not in your background discussion, and the reason I'm pointing them out is to hopefully at least convince you that 2 years is enough and convince you not to raise the penalty. 2 years. A 2-year suspension for a 15-year teacher like Ms. Chambrello means that for the next 2 years, maybe 3, she'll be employed in minimum wage employment rather than as a teacher, and that, in our view, is sufficient to send her and others a message. But here's the mitigating facts are this, is that at her here, and that are not in your background discussion, those facts are that both her current principal over the last 2 years and her previous principal at the time of her wrongdoing both testified that she was an above average teacher. They would be, and that although she did not tell them about her wrongdoing at the time, after knowing about it now, they would still be satisfied to have her on their staff currently. In fact, their current principal kept her on staff during the summer pending this hearing, although she's obviously not working now because summer's over. My point is that those people who knew her best did testify that, and the implication of their testimony, I think, is necessarily that they think a letter of censure would be satisfactory and not a suspension. I ask you to take those mitigating facts into account in considering the penalty and at least not raise it above the 2-year suspension that's been recommended by the PPAC.
Thank you.
President Arducci, that concludes the call to the public for item 9.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 10A1 through A5. Do I have a motion to approve the negotiated settlement agreements for items 10A1 through 5?
So moved.
Moved by Jill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jared. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
President Arducci, can we see who got off the line? Is anyone still on the phone line?
Superintendent Douglas is still here.
Okay, thank you. So it must have been Member Baker who got off. Thank you.
We're going to take each of the next items one by one, and I'm going to ask for a motion and we can have discussion at each item as needed. So with respect to item 10B, do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to revoke the teaching certificate of Gustavo Alvarez, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. I didn't see. Member Burton, second. Jared was first. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 10C. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to suspend Karen Bates' teaching certificate for a period of 2 years with conditions, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jared first, Jill second. All in favor?
Aye.
Just, Mr. President,
Aye. Yes, Superintendent Douglas.
I had hoped before the vote. I was curious about this one. If there was, a lot of it went through the courts with the different plans, but I wasn't sure if there was any drug treatment required either by the courts. I didn't see it. I could have missed it, or as a requirement of reapplying for this if and when she does.
President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, you're breaking up a little bit, but I believe you were asking if she has to go back through the PPAC process, and she does. That is a condition that Ms. Bates will have to go through the PPAC process prior to being recertified after her suspension. So she would have to reapply. Now, I think... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what I didn't see, and I could have missed it, was any requirement either by the courts or as a condition. Well, if she goes back to PPAC, I guess they could make it a condition for any drug treatment.
Yeah. No, because what I see, if we're just looking at the last paragraph, and then I think that was supported by the text. It just says she had to serve 10 days in jail, 2 years of probation, and suspension of her driver's license for 90, installation of the ignition interlock device for 1 year, and various fines and fees for $1,500. Mm-hmm. That's all that I saw as a legal requirement, and then PPAC has it coming back to her when she reapplies, unless I'm missing something.
And that concerned me a little bit. That's okay. Thank you for the answer.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Douglas.
So, President Narducci, the motion that was made by Member Taylor and seconded by Member Broussard is that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation of the PPAC to suspend Karen Bates' teaching certificate for a period of 2 years with conditions, and then all states and territories be so notified.
Right, which is consistent with what we just said.
Correct.
Do I have a vote? All in approval?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
President Narducci, I vote aye with a little bit of reservation.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Douglas. It's unanimous. The motion passes. 10D. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to revoke the teaching certificate of Jose Lopez, and that all states and territories be so notified? Bless you.
So moved.
We have a motion to? We have a first?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 10E. need help with this name. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conditions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to revoke the teaching certificate of
Jaime Natsumi?
Thank you. And that all states and territories be so notified.
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
We got a first and a second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. 10F. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to suspend Wesley Sell's certificate for a period of 2 years with conditions, and that all states and territories be so notified? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Jill moved. Any discussion?
President Narducci, you need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, second. Member Burton. Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any? Aye. Any opposed?
Yes, President Narducci, as I've said many times before, I think there's certain things that demand a revocation, not a mere suspension, and this, in my opinion, is one of those.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. 10G. Truman Todd. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommendation of the PPAC to suspend Truman Todd's teaching certificate for a period of 3 years with conditions, and that all states and territories be so notified?
Mr. President.
Jared?
I'm not moving this one because I have a really hard time when someone, the conditions of arrest number 2, having an altercation with local law enforcement. You know, as a sitting town councilman in a 240,000 municipality, our law enforcement are under a lot of scrutiny, and they do their best. So I really struggle with this. I would support a revocation on this. I mean, there would be some really. I didn't see. Suspension is much too light for me when you have an altercation with local law enforcement, and to have someone that has misjudgment or poor judgment enough to give the police officers a hard time for something that seemed as fairly simple. Is what precipitated this. I don't know that same level of judgment is merited in the classroom as well. I think that would be hard for me to justify to somebody. So I won't be moving or supporting the current recommendation, but if there's a way to intensify that a little bit, I could do that up to a revocation in my view.
Thank you, Jared. Is there any other discussion in this regard? Any comments to what Member Taylor said? Jared, would you like?
President?
Yes, Superintendent Douglas.
I would support a motion that Mr. Board Member Taylor would consider making.
Okay, can I have could I have a revised motion from Member Taylor with your wording?
Mr. President, I move that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of facts, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to revoke Truman Todd's teaching certificate.
Member Taylor, hold on 1 second. How do we want to do this?
So, President Narducci, Member Taylor, you would state to make a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, but to revoke the certificate of Truman, or to revoke Truman Todd's teaching certificate. You're not accepting the PPAC's recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you for that correction. I move that language, Mr. President.
Very good,
And all
Member
states
Taylor.
be so notified.
Yes, Superintendent Douglas.
If I'm not mistaken, is not revocation now up to 5 years? So Mr. Taylor would have to put whether it's up to the 5 years or some time less in the motion?
President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, revocation is always 5 years. The change is the denial of application.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
So my understanding is, thank you, Superintendent Douglas, thank you, Director Williams, thank you, Member Taylor. My understanding is that the motion is as stated by Director Williams, correct?
Correct.
So we have a motion in that regard. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Aye. Motion passes as revised. Move on to 10H. With respect to Craig Felton.
President Narducci, 10H is Jenna Webb.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jenna Webb. Jenin Webb, right? Sorry about that. 10H, Jenin Webb. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to suspend Jenin Webb's certificate for a period of 4 years with condition of completing a drug and alcohol program prior to reapplying for certification, and that all states and territories be so notified? Open for discussion.
So moved.
So moved. I see some angst. Before I move for a second, I'm sorry. Do we want any discussion before we move for a second?
President Narducci, you need a second before you move to discussion. If
thank you
there is
for
a
keeping
lack
me in
of a
order.
second, then the motion fails.
Okay. So Member Taylor moved to approve. Do I have a second?
Mr. President, I'll withdraw the motion so we can have more discussion.
Thank you. So let's discuss this one. Is there any discussion regarding where the PPAC recommendation went or is? Seeing no discussion, I'm sorry, I'll move back to, we have some discussion.
I guess on page 27 in box 15 from the PPAC, this part, Ms. Webb assaulted me, could have killed my dog, and forced me, a disabled woman, to defend myself, take her down, and it hurt me to do so because my back is all messed up and I have RA all throughout my body. And so that kind of stuck out to me, the cruelty. But
so the PPAC has recommended, their recommendation is by a vote of 5-0 that the State Board of Education suspend her teaching certificate for a period of 4 years, and that she complete an alcohol and drug treatment program prior to reapplying for certification. Is there any further discussion regarding that? Yes, Superintendent.
I lean to the revocation on this one also because of the severity of it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What's the gist of it?
Revocation as well? Yeah. Okay, with that discussion and with Superintendent Douglas's comments and comments by Ms. Mack, and seeing some shaking heads around the table, which I'm reading, I'd like to hear another motion. And I guess the motion could be in line with a revocation. So we do the exact same thing as we did last time. If that...
Mr. President?
President Taylor.
Let me see if I can get it right this time.
Member Taylor, go for it.
Okay. I move that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of facts, conclusions of law, and revoke Jen and Webb's certificate, and that all states and territories so be notified.
Thank you. Do we
Again,
have a
May.
second?
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Down to 10. Aye. Now Craig Felton. Okay, this is actually a motion to approve the application for certification of Craig Felton. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to approve the application for certification of Craig Felton?
I'll move.
Dr. Chang moves.
Acceptance of the recommendation.
Second.
We have a second by Member Taylor. Sorry. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Superintendent Douglas.
Once again on this one, I had a question, and again, I apologize if I missed something, but originally, PPAC's finding had him going through mandatory drug testing back in 2015-16, but then he chose to change profession. So I wonder if there was any indication that he did do any drug treatment in between then and now.
He did. President Narducci, members of the board, Mr. Felton and his attorney are present if they wish to discuss Mr. Felton's time during his 2-year suspension.
Sure. That'd be great. Come on up. Thank you.
Yeah, he did. He went through test. That's what it is. He agreed to participate in the test.
No, does Mr. Felton wish to speak or no?
Right, but his attorney would be by phone. This is the guy that Mr. Howard
So would you like me to call your attorney?
Yes, please.
Do you have the phone number?
Yeah.
President Narducci, we're going to call Mr. Felton's attorney.
Oh, okay. This is 2 years at Amazon, right? I mean, I remember this
Correct.
quite well. Okay. Yeah.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 5052.
President Narducci, I'm just going to double check my number, make sure that was
you.
correct.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
President Narducci, that was the correct number. Looks like it went straight to voicemail.
You know, if you'd prefer not to speak without your attorney, that's fine too, because we can proceed without finding.
I would prefer to have him present.
Okay. Thank you. Understood. But appreciate you being here. Superintendent Douglas, we're going to move on with the information that we have as is, since his attorney's not here. Is that okay?
And that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And after this agenda item, President Narducci, I'll need to leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, with
President
what
Narducci.
and you can go ahead and have your seat back in the audience. Thank you. We'll move on with item 10I. And do I have a motion that the State Board, sorry, Alicia?
President Narducci, we already have a motion by Dr. Chang, seconded by Member Taylor.
Okay.
That was the discussion portion, so you could take it to a vote.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
President Narducci, Superintendent Douglas, I'm going to abstain from this vote just because I was unable to get my questions answered, but I don't want to vote no against him without having my questions answered, so I'll abstain.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Douglas. The motion passes. Move to 10J. And that was Superintendent Douglas, right? 10J is Monica Ciambrello. Do I have a motion that the State Board of Education adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to suspend Monica Ciambrello's certificate for a period of 2 years and deny her application for certification for a period of 2 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So moved.
Member Taylor?
Second.
Member Burton, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is Cal still on the phone?
Member Baker, are you still on the phone?
I vote aye.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any opposed? Motion passes. $10K. Anybody need any time to review anything?
Excuse me, President Narducci.
Yes.
Members of the Attorney General's office.
Oh, sure.
Could I speak on this one since Ms. Huntington spoke?
You bet.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'm the Assistant Attorney General who handled this case, did the hearing, and filed a reply to her request for rehearing. I just wanted to clarify a few things. First and foremost, just so Ms. Huntington and everyone else understands, the board's already voted to adopt and has adopted the PPAC's recommendation at a prior meeting. This is the only thing we're here today is to decide, for the board to decide whether to grant or deny her request for rehearing. Well, under the law, there are Administrative Code Section 7-2-709B. It sets out a number of categories that would entitle someone to a rehearing. And the plain fact here is Ms. Huntington has not even come close to establishing any of those grounds that would entitle her to a rehearing. Basically what we have here, the notice of hearing was sent properly to her address of record, and she didn't check her mail for months and missed a hearing, and it went badly, and now she wants a second bite. Unfortunately, not checking your mail for months on end does not qualify as a recognized basis under the law for a granting of a rehearing. The other thing she touched on, and I don't know what, she said she had presented some new documents. I haven't seen those. I don't know what they are. I would ask that the board not even look at them or include them. The record has been established already, and regarding any record for her request for rehearing, that should have been presented long before today and presented to me to give me an opportunity to respond. So those should not be considered, in my opinion, in the decision today. So I just wanted to make those couple of points. Again, the only thing you're here today to do is to decide whether to grant or deny the request for rehearing. And Ms. Huntington has not established any grounds under the law that would entitle her to a rehearing. Thank you.
Thank you. So, do I have a motion under item 10K to affirm the board's decision and deny Maura Huntington's motion for rehearing by reason of her failure to establish any basis under board rule R7-2-709B to merit a rehearing in the matter, which were all laid out for us in our agenda? I have said motion.
So moved.
Member Taylor moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jill second. Any further discussion?
I do have a question, President Narducci. Just wondering, is there a time frame in which, or will she have, if Ms. Huntington would like to request a rehearing in the future, does she still have that option open to her?
Attorney General Schwartz.
No, not with the board. At this point, this is the last request she can make at this level to the board. If the board rejects her request for rehearing, then she would have further appeal rights to Superior Court in the form of what's called a JRA, Judicial Review of Administrative Action. She could appeal to Superior Court, but this is her last bite at the board.
Okay. And hopefully if she does appeal it at a higher level, she'll be able to provide new information so that there's a basis? No.
Well, hopefully not, actually.
I mean, for her benefit, I'm just saying if she were, because she has nothing stated as she hasn't provided any new information on this case. So that's part of the reason why we're denying this, because she's failure to establish any basis under board rule to merit a rehearing in the matter. So if she wants to do it in the future, she has to establish that, correct? Just wanted to get the procedural, just so I understand the procedures.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But she would have to take that up to the Superior Court, and they would have to basically reverse that decision.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have a first and a second. Maria, I can't.
May I speak? He said that I didn't check my mailbox for months. This is the proof that it was 5 days that I had to check my mailbox.
President Narducci, members of the board, Ms. Huntington can no longer address the board at this time.
So we'll have to move forward with the vote. We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Member Baker?
I vote aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Yeah.
Future items, item 11. Does any member wish to address the staff with respect?
President
That was a big item at our retreat, with respect.
President Narducci, members of the board, I would like to request an update on the social studies and science standards process, and also to look into the implementation timeline, because we probably need to shift and consider the department's consideration as far as the delay on the standards and what does that mean for districts that are going to be implementing and then phasing in the professional development needed to transition. So an update on the overall process, where it stands.
So noted.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I appreciate Member Mack's question on that. With that update, could we just get a list of the participants, who were in the original design? I asked that a couple of months ago. I'd still love to see that, if that could be included in the update.
President Narducci, members of the board, along with that, perhaps the members that are involved in internal review.
And President Narducci, Member Mack, and others, also just a review of the process and timeline. I think there's some confusion about where things are in the process.
Can you call
We have all that down? Sort of?
President Narducci, members of the board, I did get those requests on my note sheet.
Thank you.
I also would just like to state that I appreciate President Narducci's new glasses. Very nice.
I can read. It's good. I can see.
And for the next meeting, hearing aids, possibly.
Which
year was it?
Any other comments for future agenda? Anything from
President
staff?
President Narducci, members of the board, this has already been addressed in terms of what's coming up with the menu of assessments and the grades. I just want to reemphasize what was mentioned at one of the calls to the public this morning, that establishing the criteria and the rules on the menu of assessments and the grading in schools is really important for those of us out in the field, and the sooner that can get done, the better off it is for everyone. I just simply want to speak to the urgency of moving forward. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, well received. Thank you. Anything from staff to us?
President Narducci, members of the board. No.
Okay. Time. I just want to note the time. Yes.
President Narducci, the time is 10:44 a.m. and
you.
you have.
We actually in daylight.
I think we're too early for lunch.
And before lunch.
It's not even lunchtime yet.
Yeah, but we caught you trying to skip a couple items there at the end. You were really moving for us.
Well, thank you, everybody. The meeting is adjourned.
Wow.
Nicely done.
Yep.
Thank you.